Hello everyone. Today's case involves yet another young man who would disappear after leaving a house party intoxicated in a rural Canadian area, only for strange sightings to be reported and for him to never be found again. 20-year-old Christopher Mackenzie Metallic was a Mi'kmaq man born February 2nd of 1992 to his mother Mandy Metallic and father Dean Martin, being raised in the town of Listigouche, Quebec. Chris is remembered by family as always being funny and was said to be a hyper child. He eventually got into sports such as basketball, which helped him burn off that energy. As an adult, he was said to be a kind, gentle, and reserved friend, but would jump at any opportunity to get out and socialize. He also had a passion for video games and comic books. Chris was in his third year as an anthropology student at Mount Allison University in Sackville, New Brunswick, located about 370 kilometers east of his hometown in Quebec. Sackville is essentially a college town. The school is primarily an undergraduate liberal arts university that welcomes roughly 2,200 students per academic year. Chris had lived at the school's residence for the first 2 years of university, but in the fall of 2012, he would move into an apartment with other students, who knew him as a hard-working, level-headed, healthy, and athletic young man who loved school and often helped others. In the late hours of Saturday, November 24th of 2012, Chris would attend a house party on Allison Avenue in downtown Sackville. Now, any information that we have regarding what happened at this house party from either witnesses or friends is extremely sparse, and the information that we do know is kind of iffy. Friends and partygoers would speak in early news reports about their concern for Chris's whereabouts. They also spoke about how his disappearance had affected them. However, we have a huge lack of information as to what happened that night. There's no talk about what happened at that party, really. I'm not sure if that's because the reporters weren't asking the correct questions or if just no one was talking about it. I'm not saying anything happened at the party that would have led to Chris's disappearance. However, there's just such a lack of information that we just don't know. There's no narrative here. We can't understand the full situation. And I'm sure police know. I'm sure police ask those questions. However, the public doesn't know, which does make it hard to paint a full picture as to how Chris ended up where he would end up. The one thing we do know is that Chris allegedly got extremely intoxicated that night. After becoming intoxicated, Chris was said to take his shoes off, sit his cell phone down, and then go to sleep for around an hour. Once he woke up, he didn't put his shoes back on or grab his phone, but he did instead continue to hang out with his friends. He eventually ended up outside with an unnamed friend, and him and this friend would walk to a street called Wellington. It was only a block away. At this home, it's alleged that he threw up. After this, the narrative goes that Chris wanted to go home. He wasn't feeling well, he was drunk, he was tired, he had just thrown up, and so someone ended up giving him a pair of flip-flops at the Wellington home. And there was this expectation that Chris would return later that day when he was sobered up and return to grab his belongings. Chris would last be seen by friends around 1:30 a.m. to 2 a.m., which was now November 25th. The friend Chris was with wanted to go back to the original party that they were at, and the expectation was that Chris was going to walk back to his apartment. And that walk should have only been around 15 to 20 minutes. Around the same time, surveillance cameras would capture Chris running through the back lot of the Jean Coutu Pharmacy, which is located just north of Allison Avenue. I could not find this video anywhere released. I just read about it, so apparently it does exist, but it was described that he was running in the footage, which, why would he be running is the question. I mean, on one hand, sometimes drunk people do strange things. On the other hand, could it be something more concerning? Again, there's such a lack of information, we don't really know. I think we would need to actually physically see the video and have more information about his entire night to actually paint a picture and make, speculating judgments on any of this. After this, we have yet another sighting of Chris that, from what I've seen, is unconfirmed. And that sighting placed him at a pizza shop around 3 a.m. called Home Alone Pizza. This shop was located on Main Street and only about a 3-minute walk from the house party and across the street from the pharmacy, noted to have captured video footage of him. But if the timeline and the sightings are true, what happened in that hour between when the surveillance video captured him going through that parking lot of the pharmacy and then him being at the pizza shop an hour later? Then, a full another hour later, a motorist would report seeing Chris around 4 a.m. near the Trans-Canada Highway. This walk would have only been about a half an hour from the party, yet was 2 hours later. About an hour and a half after that, police would receive a call around 5:30 a.m. This call was placed by a man on his way to work who had described to the dispatcher a man matching Chris's appearance, stating that the man was walking in the area of Upper Abujagni Road, a rural side road sided by trees and fields with the occasional home. This witness claimed that the young man was wearing flip-flops and carrying what looked like 2 reflective driveway markers. Now, a few years prior, this witness had actually reported seeing a suspicious vehicle that was used to rob a local McDonald's in Sackville, so they once again had this strange feeling about this man walking in this back road. And a lot of places like this that are rural, I can contest because I have family that lives in areas like this, people are really wary about strangers and outsiders walking around in essentially their area that they don't know. Everyone kind of knows everyone in these areas, so when you see a stranger walking around, they get a bit nosy. And since the caller had this weird feeling about the situation, they would turn around and actually return home and not even go to work. After returning back home, the witness would then watch as this individual, who we know now is Chris, walk past his home and essentially disappear into the night. Police wouldn't arrive until about 45 minutes later, and by then, Chris was gone. I think it's important to note that this road leads to an even more rural area with remote forests that loop back into the main road. The area between Route 940 and White Birch Road is crisscrossed with logging roads, fields, and a river, as well as several small lakes. This area would have been over a 2-hour walk from the area of the house party. Chris's brother, 18-year-old Spencer Isaac, who also attended Mount Allison at the time, would call his mom around 8:30 p.m. that night to tell her that he couldn't find Chris. His roommate would also confirm that Chris had never made it home despite the party being quite close to where their apartment was. Again, Sackville is essentially a small town. You don't have to walk very far to get somewhere. Mandy would call the RCMP right away, but after hours of waiting for a call back, she decided to make the 4-hour drive out to Sackville at midnight. The RCMP wouldn't call her back until 6:30 a.m., now November 26th. Notifying her that Chris officially was now considered a missing person since 24 hours had elapsed since he had last been seen. Meanwhile, Chris's brother Tanner Isaac, who was only in 10th grade at the time, would be woken up by his father, who told him to pack their bags because they were meeting Mandy in Sackville to help search. Tanner saying that after Chris didn't turn up, his world shattered. A few days later, a pair of flip-flops would end up being found in a wooded area near Route 940 in Upper Abujagni Road, which, as you can see, is a rural area spotted by homes. Footprints were also found in the mud along a dirt road that were believed to be Chris's. Chris's path would end up being traced by the RCMP into the woods down White Birch Road, his prints eventually leading to the Tantramar River, where tracking dogs lost his scent. The river would later be searched by divers. But ultimately, all of these resources led to nothing really being found, leading to the searches ending after only 3 days. Mandy saying, quote, "Some officers said that maybe he did fall in and get washed out to the bay. The dam was open that night, and another officer said, we think he's still in the woods somewhere. So that's where we've always been searching, that same area back up and down the road. He can't just vanish in the middle of the woods, and there's no trace of anything." End quote.
Worst fears going through my head.
Mandy Metallic says the last 3 days have been a nightmare. She and her family are waiting for her son to return home.
I hope you're okay. I want you home. I want you home.
Chris Metallic was last seen at a house party on Allison Avenue early Sunday morning. RCMP say they've received tips he was seen shortly after at a pizza shop nearby, but police say they need to view surveillance videos before that can be confirmed.
The Tri-County Search and Rescue was here yesterday to do some urban search. So they were in the area, covering mostly the area where we know that he was last seen, so where the parties were, basically. And today we're expanding the search.
Family and friends of the third-year Mount Allison student have been doing their own searches around Sackville.
And his roommates and myself are also going crazy around town, looking everywhere, asking anyone or any place he's always been. But I mean, this whole situation's out of character for him.
I mean, it's not like him. He would definitely be back by now, and he doesn't have his phone or shoes, you know.
Alex Corey last saw Metallic at the house party. She says she feels hopeless not knowing where he is.
Everyone in all my classes, they're talking about it, which is good, getting the word out, but yeah, it's a pretty awful feeling.
hard to listen to.
Chris Metallic was last seen wearing a bright blue shiny sweater, jeans, and possibly flip-flops. Metallic's family hopes he or anyone he knows will call to let them know he's safe.
Mandy would reveal in a 2013 interview with the Tribune that 2 sets of footprints would actually end up having been found, as well as a handprint in the mud near the area where Chris was last believed to have been. Mandy stating, quote, "There is no way he walked the 15 kilometers in sandals in the dark and mud. 2 sets of his footprints were found some 15 kilometers apart, so someone had to have taken him up there. He sent a friend a text around 11:30 p.m. that night, but his phone hasn't been used since. It's frustrating they only told us about the handprint a couple weeks ago, when they found it days after Chris had disappeared. The print was only a few hundred feet from where the flip-flops he was wearing were found, so the search for Chris at the time was downstream from the flip-flops. Had we known about the handprint back in November, we would have searched upstream for that, and who knows what the outcome would have been." End quote. Keep in mind, this is a rough visual of how far Chris would have walked that night, intoxicated in flip-flops for part of the way, and then barefoot for a large portion of it, that portion being on rough terrain and dirt roads.
Footwear was located a few days later in a rural area roughly 16 kilometers from the party, but nothing else. Spencer Isaac was a freshman at Mount A at the time of his big brother's disappearance. He tries not to let his imagination run wild when thinking about what happened.
Personally, I do feel that somebody knows something, and it's sitting with them after 10 years. It's still with them, and it's not being shared.
Metallic's mother, Mandy, was busy at her home in Listugush, Mi'kmaq First Nation in Quebec today, fundraising for new billboards to put up in Sackville. She said the first 5 years were the worst, but she's learned to live with not knowing what happened or where her son is.
I don't feel he's alive. I mean, I'm like you always want to have that hope, but you kind of know.
Yeah.
I'm not giving up hope of finding him. I believe he's still in the woods there somewhere.
The RCMP told CTV News it's still an active missing persons case, but Metallic's disappearance is not considered suspicious. Isaac has moved forward with his life, but says there will always be a part of him stuck in time.
It stays at, me being 18 years old when he went missing, and just not knowing what happened, right? If he's found, however he's found, I'm hoping that can kind of be the end of that chapter. He really was a really special guy, and I miss him dearly each day.
The hometown community would rally for Chris, raising funds and holding vigils. Billboards and signs would be put up. His anthropology professor would also express how hard it had been for the classroom and to see Chris's seat sitting empty, saying it had been the hardest thing he's had to face in the classroom. Desperate to find her son, Mandy has conducted an uncountable number of searches. She has spent tens of thousands of dollars on trips to Sackville, searching with cadaver dogs, divers, drones, and even helicopters, saying that giving up was not an option, but that she also had other kids to live for. And Chris had sadly disappeared so far away from home that it wasn't easy trying to travel constantly. That's something that we've talked about in quite a few of these cases, where a loved one disappears in a whole different city, a whole different province, a whole different side of the world even. Just think about how expensive that is to have to travel back and forth if you want to try to find your loved one and to search for them. All of the plane tickets, gas, hotels, food you have to buy eating out, and then on top of that, all of the search efforts you have to pay for, pay for volunteers to be there to help them out, food and water for them, any other resources you want to use like cadaver dogs, divers, that all costs a lot of money. A family member going missing isn't cheap. And that's the scary reality of it. If authorities aren't going to search to the full capacity that the family feels fit, then the family has to basically take on that burden. I think that's something we don't think about enough. A search conducted on Chris's 21st birthday in February of 2013 involved 100 volunteers, divided into 5 groups, each with a guide and a radio, who were sent to 5 separate locations. It was said to be a good weekend for a group search because there was little to no snow left on the ground after a record warm streak and rainfall earlier in the week. 4 years after Chris's disappearance, a specialized search dog will be brought in to go through the area. He was last reported to be sighted by that witness. However, it doesn't seem like that dog found anything of interest. Over a decade would pass without answers.
marking an anniversary that no parent ever wants to face.
Never imagined it would make it. It'd come up to 10 years. Figured he'd be found a long time ago.
20-year-old Chris Metallic went missing exactly 1 decade ago on November 25th, 2012. His family describes the Mount Allison student as sensitive, caring, athletic, smart, and just an all-around good kid.
You learn how to live with it and still hope for him to be found. And some days are really, really hard.
On the anniversary, most of Chris's family gathered together in Sackville, remembering what made him who he was and finding support by being together.
I grew up hanging out with him all the time and, watching him play his PlayStation, and I would just sit on the floor in his room and watch him play and just talk about whatever video game he was playing at the time.
And with his 12-week-old daughter nearby, Spencer Isaac reflected on the kind of uncle Chris might have been.
I think that Chris would have been kind of scared of her a little bit, but but he would have loved her. And I think when he loves deeply, and he gives everything that he can to somebody. And so I know when he would have met her, he would have been scared to hold her, but he would have done anything for her.
With heavy hearts, the family and the community continue searching.
So many people didn't even know him, but everybody loves him. They want him found. It doesn't look exactly the way you left it, because that's all these textbooks from school. That's all these movies that I don't even know where to put them. And everything I had packed.
It's been 10 years that Mandy Metallic has been looking for answers about what happened to her son, Chris Mackenzie Metallic, a then 20-year-old Mi'kmaq from Listugush, Quebec.
He can't just vanish in the middle of the woods and then there's no trace of anything.
Chris went missing after a party while he was in his 3rd year at Mount Allison University in Sackville, New Brunswick, 4 hours away from Listugush. His brother Spencer, who was also attending Mount Allison, called his mom on November 25th, 2012, to tell her he couldn't find Chris. Tanner Isaac, Chris's other brother, was in grade 10 when he went missing.
I figured I'd wake up the next morning and they'd be like, oh, he found him, It's just Chris being Chris, He needed some time alone.
But when his brother didn't reappear, Tanner's world was shattered.
That's the hard part, is seeing everybody just fall apart because we're so lost and we don't know what to do anymore.
Chris's path was traced by the RCMP into nearby woods, but ultimately all roads led to nowhere.
You could tell he was getting lost. He was going back and forth, back and forth.
His prints eventually led to the Tantramar River, where tracking dogs lost his scent. The river was later searched by divers.
Some places are really hard to go through. Like this is where, that's the size of the river they think he fell in and got washed out.
Mandy has combed over the road where footprints presumed to belong to Chris were identified.
It's all I'm focused on. I don't do anything else. When I'm home, I'm planning on what to do next, and then when we're there, we're searching. And
Chris touched the lives of many and was an avid basketball player.
That's the newspaper clipping when they won the gold medal. That was his last game.
Both Mandy and Tanner said they felt the RCMP put in their best efforts to find Chris.
The RCMP are really helpful, and it's surprising because, just being Indigenous, you feel a little hesitant with getting help from them, but they've helped out so much with getting helicopters and searches and divers and everything.
Desperate to find her son, Mandy conducted innumerable searches. She spent tens of thousands of dollars on trips to Sackville, searching with dogs, divers, drones, and even helicopters.
Giving up's not an option. And you still gotta live. I got other kids, and we live here. It's so far away.
The community rallied for Chris. Listugush residents drove up to Sackville to help search, raise funds, and held vigils for Chris.
The community support was overwhelming in a good way because, Chris knew a lot of people and he was friends with so many people and he never had bad blood with anybody. So to see all of his friends and just community members in general come out and help us was amazing,
Even now, the community participated in Mandy's fundraiser to fund new billboards on the 10-year anniversary.
I painted this.
Despite previous positive encounters with the RCMP, Mandy Metallic says she hasn't heard from the RCMP in months. But that won't stop her from searching for closure on the well-trodden road in Sackville.
I feel like I need to keep his disappearance out there.
And nearing that timestamp, Mandy would still say that she didn't sleep well and usually woke around 3 a.m. Anytime she would hear that remains were found, it always scared her. Because even though she wanted to find her son, the thought of him being discovered like that was difficult. So what possibilities lie here? One theory is that Chris fell in the river, drowned, and was washed into the Bay of Fundy. That could explain how he just completely dropped off the face of the earth. Others believe he got lost in the woods and the marsh, and he was just so far in there that his body just hasn't been discovered. It's very rough terrain. Some also think that there could be foul play involved. But due to the limited evidence as to where exactly he went missing from, and the circumstances leading up to his disappearance being, very sparse, there's not a lot of information on that. These sightings are also just so far apart. They're very confusing. Why is there such gaps in time? Because of all of that, it's made this entire case extremely challenging. Even though he was said to be extremely intoxicated, why would he wander nearly 4 to 5 hours outside of town? How would he have gotten so lost when he just lived, blocks away from where that party was? It's not like he was new to town. He'd been living there for, at least 2+ years now, going to school there. I'm sure the vast majority of us watching right now have had quite a few drinks before, especially in our youth. And I'm sure not everyone, but I'm sure a lot of us have experienced at least being, a very, very drunk at least once before. And I know alcohol affects everyone vastly differently. Let me say that first off. However, surely someone would have to notice, even in that kind of intoxicated state, the difference between walking a couple blocks within the city limits compared to walking hours and hours outside of town to the point where you're walking into woods. And it seems like he followed the roads and sidewalks all the way up there and then decided to just walk into the woods and disappear and fall in a river possibly. It's so confusing. And then on top of that, to do that in flip-flops. You'd think after walking for a couple hours, he would have sobered up enough to realize, hey, I'm nowhere where I'm supposed to be. Maybe I should turn around. But it doesn't seem like he did. How much did he truly drink that night is a big question I have. It just leads me to having so many questions. How could he walk that far, still being so drunk that he would wander into the woods and get lost? But the thing is, by then, would he still be that intoxicated? That's what's confusing. So intoxicated to just keep walking and not turn around and go home. Or is there something more at play here? Did he take a substance we don't know about? Maybe he was tripping out on something. Alcohol's one thing, but drugs are something I am not versed in, so I'm not sure. Let me know down below if a substance was taken. 4 hours later, could he still be tripping out on it and that could have led to him getting lost in the woods? I'm not sure, but I don't feel like alcohol would do that after walking 4 hours. That's what confuses me. But hey, let me know your opinion on that. He could have had, we don't know, 10 beers, 5 shots on top of that and just been so obliterated that he could have been blacked out. I have known people that black out when they drink. And let me tell you, they definitely don't know what's going on around them. And it's quite scary. But, 4 hours later, after sleeping for a bit, walking around, moving their body, that's a different story. That's where things here, the lines get blurred. It's very strange. Something is off about this case to me. There's a lot of information I think we don't know. I don't think this is just a simple, he got drunk, wandered into the woods. He walked at least 4 hours from when his friends last seen him. But then there's also gaps in time. So what is happening here? Another question I have, if he had eventually sobered up and gone so far out of town that he was lost, why not try to flag down someone? Clearly, there was witnesses driving around, at least one. Why not even attempt to flag someone down, ask for directions, something? Why keep walking deeper and deeper into the woods? On top of that, the fact that he had left his phone behind at the party means that he couldn't be tracked. If he had had his phone, there's chances that he could have been found, even quickly. Another question I do have is, did police or any searchers ever find those driveway markers? Those sticks that he was carrying around, according to the witness? That would make sense if he was wandering around drunk, grabbed him out of there. Maybe he was just flinging him around. Drunk people do stupid things. But whatever happened to those driveway markers? Because his flip-flops were found, but the driveway markers weren't. Unless they were, and again, that's just information that's just lost in all of this. But my big question is, what do you think? This case is over a decade old now. It's going on 13 years. And do you have any other information that we didn't talk about here today? I'll be in the comment section chatting with you all. But let's take one more good look at Chris. Chris is described as an Indigenous man standing 6 foot 1 inches tall and around 180 pounds, with dark brown hair and brown eyes. He is described as a healthy and athletic basketball player and was last seen wearing a shiny blue sweatshirt, jeans, and flip-flops. He also wears glasses, but it is unknown if he was wearing them when he went missing. I also think it's important to note that Chris was quite tall. It's noted he was around 6 foot 1 inches tall and around 180 pounds, and he had an extremely athletic build. He was an athletic young man. I think he would be someone that would be harder to overpower. He would be quite strong. This wasn't, a 5'1" petite young woman wandering around getting lost, could be kidnapped. I'm not saying it's impossible. I think anyone could almost be kidnapped, but a 6 foot 1 man who's athletic would be a harder target. I think someone like that would be less at risk of being kidnapped, but nothing is impossible. If you have any information as to what happened to Chris, please contact the authorities. I'll have the information down below. As always, my heart goes out to this family. I truly, truly hope you will get answers. I truly hope Chris is found. There's one too many unanswered questions here. I hope you all stay safe out there. Lock your windows and doors. And please, 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 we talk one too many about these cases of young individuals, especially young men, wandering off drunk alone. And it leads to stories like this. Please stay with your friends. Please use a buddy system. Something girls often do. Boys need to implement it as well. If you want to go and have fun, go have fun, but please be safe about it. And I hope to see you in the next video.